The paradigm of right and wrong ties in with a program. So what is the program that we are assessing, whether it's running correctly or incorrectly? And the predominant program that we're all a part of is the continuum of life and evolution. And life and evolution on an endless continuum can be defined as divide, expand, specialize, experiment, and repeat. Divide, expand, specialize, and repeat. And the program moves towards complexity. It moves towards variety as you get more and more iterations of life and they interact and synergize. The other continuum of evolution is one of intelligence, particularly human evolution. And intelligence is measured by the efficiency with which energy, time, money, and natural resources is converted into sustainable human well-being. Now, every human being in the history of the species has wanted to feel sustainably good and wanted to avoid feeling chronically bad. And this is part of that program because we feel good, we increase our sense of sustainable well-being when we become more intelligent. And our intelligence is measured by how efficiently we're converting energy into sustainable well-being. When we are converting more and more energy into sustainable well-being, we feel great. It's almost self-referential. But this is an innate part of the program. Now, when we're feeling good sustainably, when we're confidently, because there's also a continuum of mastery. We start off knowing little or nothing at all. And at the end of the continuum of the evolution of intelligence, we can confidently predict how the protocol of transforming energy into sustainable well-being. And so we can repeat it. And so that protocol consists of taking the one, dividing it into language, dividing it into pieces called words, and then figuring out how to sequence the pieces in such a way as to facilitate higher and higher levels of intelligence, higher and higher levels of sustainable human well-being. So that's the program. And evolution has been working on some version of this program since the inception of the universe. And we're just one of many iterations at this point in time space. So when we look at right and wrong, what we're looking at is, are we on track with that program? Are we evolving? Are we becoming more intelligent? Are we moving towards sustainable well-being? Well, that's over on this side. Or are we over on this side where we are off track, where we're going in the wrong direction? And so it's relative to the program. When we say you're going the wrong way, it's relative to the awareness of all the possible or probable ways of getting there and whether this is an efficient way. I mean, every way you could set off in the opposite direction to your birthday party, head to the port, sail around the world, and arrive at the birthday party, some months later or perhaps years later, and say that, no, that was the right direction because, I eventually got there. But we say it's the wrong direction. Why? Because it's not the most efficient path of getting to the stated goal. And so wrong, the sense of wrong, when we get this sense like, that's wrong, it speaks to our core programming to move towards the efficiency with which we transform energy into sustainable well-being. Because we all innately share the assumption that we want to feel good, we want to feel better, we share that assumption, we also then share the assumption that it's wrong if you're drinking poison. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's not the right thing to do. It's bad. It's wrong. i.e., suffering is going to go up if you take that path. Well-being is going to go down. Now, this is the key thing, and it's also the basis for all arguments, because what we're really debating, what everyone is debating, is the right path to get there, the right way to generate sustainable well-being. Now, some of the debates are the tension between the illusionary fractal of the individual as, in a paradigm of isolation from the ecology. So when we think of the isolated individual and pretend that it has nothing to do with the underlying ecology, then something that seems to increase the pleasure of the individual. Let's say the individual would enjoy lighting a cigarette, and the individual would enjoy not having to put the cigarette out. So just drop the cigarette. And so in this illusion of separation between the individual and the underlying ecology, it appears that this is a selfish thing to do because we're within this illusion. And the illusion, of course, is pierced by every science known to the species, because every science known to the species ultimately connects everything to every other thing through the fabric of time, through the fabric of space, through the fabric of complex interrelationships. Every single thing in existence today can be traced back to its origin at, in our narrative, the Big Bang. And so we are connected, but within the lens, within the fractal lens of language, which informs our sense of consciousness and distinction, we are separate from other people. We are separate from our ecology. And so I throw the cigarette down because I don't want to waste my time preserving the butt. I don't want to waste my time knocking out the flame. Of course, the illusion of separation is jeopardized when the flames catch on dry leaves, when the dry leaves catch nearby tinder, and pretty soon there's a fire that obviously does have something to do with me. That's why it's a very fragile cult-programmed illusion that we have nothing to do with the ecology out of which we emerge and with which we have a relationship. It's similarly fragile that we have nothing to do with other people, which all you have to do is follow the ancestral line back to the first human, and you realize you're connected to the first human. You wipe out the first human, however many hundreds of thousands of years ago, and suddenly you do not exist. And so there's a tether through time between all things. And so if it doesn't, if it bothers us, it doesn't feel right. You're dropping litter, you're burning down someone's house, etc. It doesn't feel right. It's speaking to a program that's saying, no, you've gone off track here. You're behaving as if you have nothing to do with the underlying ecology that you are innately connected with. There's just no arena in which you are not connected. Now, the connection may be subtle and indirect as viewed through the lens of language and various cultural paradigms, but it's a very deep connection which all you have to do is stop participating in the ecology by holding your breath, because your life, minute by minute, emerges as a gift from plants, from trees. And if you don't receive that influx of energy from your ecology, you're dead in a matter of minutes. Now, of course, it's even more intense than that. If it isn't for gravity, if it isn't for, if the sun decides to go supernova and explodes and generates 10,000% more heat, well, you die in an instant, as soon as that wave hits you. There's so many areas that connect us innately to our ecology. And the sense of right and wrong is partly determined by whether we're honoring the relay. A relationship is a series of relays. A relay race is you run here, you run here, you run here. It's an exchange. Milton Friedman said there's no such thing as a free lunch, meaning there's a price for everything. If you go and have sex with someone, there's an exchange of energy. It affects them, it affects you. It's never a one-way street. If you violate someone, you are also participating in the violation. If you disrespect part of your species, you are disrespecting a part of the fabric of which you are innately connected. And so there can be a feeling that this is wrong. And it's important to understand that all right and wrong is seen from a point of view. So in any circle, there are lots of points of view. So that's number one. Number two, that one of the most important principles in evolution is grace and symmetry, which leads to efficiency, which leads to more sustainable well-being. Because for well-being to be sustainable, it has to consume less energy to create it than is spent to create it. If you consume 2 units of well-being in order to generate 1 unit of well-being, it's not sustainable well-being. If you invest $2 in order to make $1, you have a failed business. If life did this, we would cease to exist. We exist on a winning program because life is such a winner that 24 billion years ago, according to our narrative, a tiny little bit of energy this big started out of nothing. Well, that's always pretty magical, isn't it? Take nothing and then you have something. The rabbit out of the hat. That's what magic's all about. And of course, the rabbit was hiding somewhere. But in our story, it's real magic. There was absolutely nothing, and now there's something. But how many people, if you gave them a little bit of energy this big and gave them 24 billion years to figure it out, how many people could turn something this big into a multiverse that's still going along? Because there's no end in sight. The multiverse is going along, getting bigger and more complex by the day, with no end in sight. That's a pretty stunning accomplishment. It's called sustainability. It's not, the statistics of U.S. businesses where I think 90% of all businesses go belly up within 10 years of starting. Well, look at life. Look at the tremendous explosion of new and complex patterns of energy, all figuring out how to relate to one another. It's a tremendously winning program, and we're part of it. every single cell in our body can be traced back through time-space to that initial little energy less than the size of a pea, and then nothing. That's life's handiwork. So for it to be sustainable, you've got to take $1 and turn it into $2, and then into $4. If you follow a sustainable pattern of investing energy, whether it's money or love or anything else, it gets bigger with time. Now, if you don't follow a sustainable pattern of energy, it means you're not following life's program. It means you're on the wrong trail, because life turned this into the multiverse in 24 billion years, and who knows what life is up to in the next trillion years. Life is not running out of time. We are. Human beings are, perhaps the planet is, but life is not running out of time. How many more universes within universes will exist in 20 trillion years? If we've already got this universe with the probability of other universes in just 24 billion years, we're just getting started. And then there are exponential curves in life, meaning that certain forms of evolution speed up, and the speed at which evolution happens also speeds up. It's an exponential curve of growth and evolution. Wouldn't it be nice to have one's retirement fund on an exponential curve of growth, where you made more money, and then the speed at which you made more money went up, and then the amount of money you made every day, the rate of return went up, and the speed of the rate of return going up went up, plus it compounded. I mean, that's life for you. So where we deviate from life and its marvelous track record of creating universes out of absolutely nothing with no end in sight, we die. We deviate from the code, the program. It doesn't feel good. And the first clue is, we start suffering. Our well-being goes down. Now, to some extent, this is a cue, right? Because it's partly whether we're looking at the isolated ego through the lens of the cult, or whether we're looking ecologically through the lens of ecology, through the lens of interconnectivity. If we're looking ecologically through the lens of connectivity, and we do something that is good for our planet, it's also good for us because we're hosted by the planet. The planet gave birth to us, and we are transforming the planet. So if we increase the sustainability of the planet, we increase the sustainability of the species, we increase the sustainability of our offspring, we increase the well-being of our life. It's more enjoyable, generally speaking, to imagine a long and brilliant future rather than a traumatic death. And so because it feels better, it gives us a clue that we might be on the right path, the path towards evolution and sustainable well-being, rather than the path of devolution, inefficiency, and destruction. So these are clues about the right path. But all cultures are looking, and thus all human consciousness, is refracted in words. Now you can take the sphere and you can cut it up this way. That creates those divisions, and each of those can be labeled a word. Or you can cut the world up this way. A language has latitude on how it divides reality and refracts it in human consciousness. I could refract this by angles, and I could say this finger has these angles, this finger has these angles, and this finger has these angles. So I could say angle 1, 2, 3, 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 and I could describe the distinctions of the perceived hand in the language of angles. And someone could follow along and cut the world up into angles. Or I can divide it into particles and say this is my tiny finger, my ring finger, my middle finger, my index finger, and my thumb. And what I'm doing is separating it with the space around it, which of course is an illusion, because if there's no space, there's no finger. The finger is in the space, so is innately connected to the space. It's like a child saying, I want nothing to do with my parents. If there's no parent, there is no child. It's one is innately linked to the other. But if we use words to separate them, we can pretend that they are, truly separate. Now, one of the things that we do is we group perceptions through language into a paradigm. Now let's talk about the paradigm of materialism. Now the paradigm of materialism says, first of all, that if it cannot be seen, heard, smelled, touched, then it's not real. Well, what's real and what's not real? Well, it doesn't matter whether it's real or not real. It's not important, says the materialistic paradigm. If it cannot be seen, smelled, heard, touched, tasted, it's not material. And if it's not material, it doesn't matter. Now, a paradigm is a lens, and it's a circle. So we take all of reality here, and we draw a circle called materialism. And we look through it, and we block out everything but what is revealed in the paradigm. And so what we gather in the paradigm are thoughts. Well, no. Thoughts aren't real. You can't see them, smell them, taste them. Right. So get rid of that. Apples are real. Apples are good. So within the paradigm of materialism, religion is a waste of time, right? People could have planted crops, but instead they went and prayed to Jesus. What a waste of time. Within the paradigm of materialism, going to church is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. Because within the paradigm of materialism, what's right is everyone should create as much hedonic pleasure as possible, because that's what matters. Gardens should be made more beautiful. Why? Because they're material, and you can see them, they're real. Smells, bad smells should be gotten rid of. Food should be well prepared and delicious. But books, sermons, books about how to prepare better meals, okay, fine. But books about mythology, that doesn't work, right? It's wrong within the paradigm of materialism. But what about the paradigm of symmetry? Well, of what? What do you make symmetry? Well, what about the paradigm of symmetry of polarity? Well, what's the paradigm of polarity? Well, you take the one and you cut it in half. And now this half is the right side, this half is the left side. Well, why is it? Well, because I said so. I've got the knife, I've got the language. This is the right side, this is the left side. Why isn't it the bit size and the poke side? Because I said so. It's just made up. We make up language, then we believe it, and then we talk as if the language is real. So over here, we've cut the world into right and left. Well, you can also cut it into up and down. You can cut it into men and women. You can cut it into masculine and feminine, different from male and female gender. But if you look at an extreme, for example, a flow of communication, because in truth, communication doesn't happen if there isn't a speaker that speaks coherently and a listener that listens intelligently. If you have both, then you have communication. If you have a speaker and no listener, or a listener and no speaker, you don't have communication. So in truth, they are interconnected. You cannot have meaningful speech if even the speaker cannot hear what they're saying and doesn't know what they're saying and doesn't know the meaning of the words. So communication requires a speaker and a listener. Electricity requires a plug and an outlet. It requires polarity. And it's irrational, it's absolutely absurd to make a case that the plug is more important than the outlet, that black is more important than white, that up is more important than down. But that's exactly what cults do. Having cut the world into polarity, cults proceed to tell you that going up, advancing, is better than going best. And in fact, this whole paradigm of right and wrong is polarity. Being right is good, being wrong is bad, right? So you don't want to be wrong, you want to be right. You want to be evolving, you don't want to be devolving. But even that is a little bit of a joke, because how can you create something without destroying something? If I want to take this time and create this video, I'm also destroying the probability field. I was going to go watch a movie, but I decided to let that probability fall apart. It's ruined. You know, the last 20, 30 minutes, whatever, that isn't happening. This is happening. When you create something, you destroy a much bigger probability field in which none of the other things that could have been happening are happening. You sacrifice the probability field for the actuality field. You create something by destroying many probabilities. Now, so can you de-link creating with destruction? Seems to be inextricably connected. What about evolution and devolution? Doesn't one pattern of energy have to devolve in order for another pattern of energy to evolve? And you see, the tricky part, the paradoxical part, when we understand that there are an infinite number of paradigms, is that as we're advancing in one paradigm, we are not advancing in another paradigm. And this is, again, there's no such thing as a free lunch. As we evolve and become more modern, we've also exponentially increased the illusion of language called waste. Now, waste is energy that human beings created, but then don't know what to do with. And so rather than saying, this is stuff we don't know what to do with, we say this is stuff that is garbage. So waste is just energy that we've turned into something that we lack the intelligence to do something useful with. And so there we are. And so as we're evolving, becoming more sophisticated, more modern, more cultured, we've gone from 500 years ago on the American plains, a Native American could die and wouldn't leave a single kilogram of waste after 50 to 80 years of life. They wouldn't leave a single kilogram of energy in a pattern that the tribe did not know what to do with, did not find sacred, wasn't biodegradable and was not recyclable into the ecology. But see, we've advanced as we've devolved, because today when an American dies, there are 100 metric tons of energy patterns in a landfill that nobody in the cult knows what to do with. And so you have an evolution, Netflix, right? We didn't have Netflix 500 years ago, and we have a devolution from not even a kilogram of waste to 100 tons of waste. So are we evolving or are we de-evolving? We're changing, and some things are going up and some things are going down. And so the paradigm of symmetry in polarity basically says that a car wheel is more graceful, is more efficient, and therefore more intelligent if the hub is in the exact center. And a car wheel that is round is more intelligent than a car wheel that is square. Because if we drive in a car with square tires, the asymmetry of transporting mass and energy in a non-symmetrical shape, square, is not as symmetrical as a circle, is a very bumpy ride. In other words, it's crying out for symmetry. It's crying out for balance. Please get rid of these corners here and get us back the wheel. It's life reminding us of the law of grace, which is the law of symmetry, which is the law of balance. So the paradigm of polarity in balance is expressed in a much older culture, Chinese and various Asian culture, as the balance of yin and yang. And they were sophisticated enough to understand that while they appear to be distinct, they are in fact innately connected. That there's yang at the center of yin and yin at the center of yang, and that one moves into the other, and that what is important is to move from an asymmetrical paradigm, an asymmetrical relationship with reality where this part is overdeveloped and another part is underdeveloped, to a symmetrical, towards grace. Now, when you look at materialism through the lens of materialism, you have the sense of wrong being, the atrocious waste of time of poor people, donating money to churches, praying when, their fields need tending. It's a complete and utter waste of time, and we just all need bigger TVs, fancier clothes, faster cars, and then what? We will all feel better. Everyone will feel more sustainable well-being. And so we just need more and more and more material gratification. Now, the paradigm of polarity and balance says, well, what's the opposite? So materialism is over here, everything that's on the outside. But what's the opposite of everything that's on the outside? Well, everything on the inside. So everything that's outside of the body is over here, and everything that's inside the body is over here. So what's right from the paradigm of materialism becomes incredibly wrong through the paradigm of polarity in balance, where whatever the polarity is, first of all, you identify the pole. This is the one over here, and this is two over here. You identify the pole, and having accurately defined the extreme, in this case, the outer world and the inner world, you then seek symmetry. You seek balance within the pole. This is the Buddhist path of the middle way. So, whereas in the Western paradigm, you identify the good people, that's over here. Then you identify the bad people, that's over here. And then you define who's the good people and who's the bad people. And then you try to kill the bad people. The world would be a better place if we got rid of all the bad people. And this is the self-referential paradigm, much like materialism, where in materialism, the world would be a better place if no one believed in dreams, if no one spent time visiting a therapist, if no one studied religion, if no one meditated. What? Meditating, sitting there, holding hands, pretending you're superior. What a waste of time. You could be out having sex at a party, and as long as the drugs don't hurt your body, more drugs, happier drugs, hedonism. Let's feel maximum pleasure and create more and more sensation. And the Chinese would look at this and say, no, you're completely and utterly wrong. You need to balance that extreme outer expression with going deeply inward. You need to find the other pole. Why? So that you can find the center. Why? Because when you have your axle at the center of the wheel, when you locate your identity, your pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, at the center of the polarity, you have a smooth ride, and sustainable well-being goes up. When you have your pole in an extreme on either side, totally focusing on meditation and never sowing your crops, or totally sowing your crops and having no sense of meaning, no sense of grandeur, no sense of mystery, no sense of transcendence, no sense of interconnectivity, no sense of the magic. I mean, the scientist materialist wants you to believe in the magic that the entire universe came out of nothing for no reason, poof, without even a magician. But when you just do things for absolutely no reason, your well-being will be lower sustainably, just as it would be if you put half-moon wheels on your car and drove it around. Because geometry, reality is teaching us, come back to life, come back to the code, come back to your nature. Why? Because it works. Because life's program, running through all of our bodies and thus our minds. Because, if you listen to a materialist scientist, they will say that your consciousness emerges out of the body. So your consciousness and everything in it is actually material. And all of the mythology, that's material too. Because it's all coming from the body, which is what the materialist is supposed to focus on. And so all of these things get a little bit shaky when you follow them to their natural edge. All extremes bring us safely to their opposite. If you decide you want to fly west and you fly due west for long enough, you will arrive east. From the east, back to where you want to go. Because reality is always trying to bring us back to center. It's trying to bring us back to grace. And one of the guidance systems of this program to stay on track is that within this beautiful sphere of symmetry, the more we head into one side and overdevelop one side, we develop thinking but not feeling. We develop materialism but not psychology. We study the science of subatomic particles, but we don't study the science of relationships. When we get too one-sided, the car gets bumpier and bumpier and bumpier. And pretty soon nobody wants to get in the car. And this is evidenced by the very large casualty rate in human cults. Because of the 10,000 cults and 10,000 languages that anthropologists estimate have been there, 95% of them are all extinct. And the rest are dying at an alarmingly fast rate. What makes us think that our cult, be it a materialist cult or a spiritual cult, whatever the extreme is, whatever the dogma is, they all had religions as well. And they all told their people that their way was the right way, the only way, the most intelligent way. Now, what's true is that because we look at the world in language, we must divide the one, the unconscious whole, into pieces, called words. And then we assemble those pieces in a system of connecting the words, of reconstructing the whole through human consciousness, through language, to create a model of reality. But it's never a perfect model. Now, every model of reality, every paradigm for reality leads to an identity, a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And that pattern leads to a probability field. And that probability field equals a series of statistics. So a statistical amount of suicide, depression, joy. Everything that's out there that we've given a label to has a statistical probability field in a given system of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And combined, all of those different statistics create the intelligent quotient, which is the yield. How much time, money, and natural resources go into how much percentage of sustainable well-being. So the percentage is the intensity of the well-being, the degree of sustainability, how effortless it is, how much momentum. Obviously, the more spherical and symmetrical it is, the more the momentum continues. The amount of people who share in the well-being, the amount of areas you have. So what percentage of all the areas we could have well-being do we have well-being? Of the well-being we have, how intense is it? Of the well-being we have, how efficient is it and how sustainable is it? And of the well-being we have, how many people share in the well-being? And that gives us the yield. The protocol, the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, that is every cult and every ego, every identity, and the yield of sustainable well-being. And every cult in human history has brought its people a yield and a statistical probability field. So, and it will vary. Some cultures will treat their women very well. Some cultures will treat their women very poorly. Well, any cult that treats half of its people very poorly, upon which it depends to exist, is obviously lower in intelligence than a cult that treats half of its people very well, or more, or all of its people very well. So you have an intelligence yield. So every cult in human history does certain things well. Every cult in human history tells its people this is the only way to do it. And there is a gravitational pull towards every cult. And it works like this. There's a network effect. What's the point of sending an email if 90% of the people you send an email to don't have email? It's a low point. What's the point of bowing and saying, if 90% of the people don't know what that means? Now, what's the point of saying, Hey, how you doing? I'm great, even if you're miserable. What's the point of doing that if 90% of the people don't know what you're doing? So the network effect of any cult is the gravitational pull towards the norm. Now, the norm is the largest mass, and gravity always pulls towards the largest mass. Whatever is the largest mass in a space has a gravitational pull. It's the law of mass. Now, there's also the law of intelligence, which is the law of the minority. So the law of intelligence says that a minority of people is always in a state of higher sustainable well-being than the majority. But in order to reach those higher yields of well-being, a minority must diverge from the majority. They must diverge from the herd. So we have the law of mass, which is the network effect. It's efficient. Everyone knows how to do the things that the cult tells us to do. Everyone understands it. You don't have to teach a new language. As soon as you go outside your cult and speak another language or speak the language of your cult, nobody knows what you're talking about. So it becomes the wrong language. Why? Because if you speak Swahili in Japan and you experience chronic misery because you're surrounded by Japanese, Swahili is the wrong language. But if a Japanese goes to Swahili and speaks Japanese, she's speaking the wrong language. Why? Because it's going to reduce her sustainable well-being to continue speaking Japanese in an ecology, in an environment in which nobody understands what she's talking about. And so right and wrong is contextual. In the largest sense, the question is, what is the most sustainable path to the highest possible yields of energy conversion from energy to sustainable well-being, the highest yields of sustainable well-being? That's the right way of doing it. Now, every system is refracted into language, and most cults are built 90% out of dogma and 10% out of evolving intelligence. So if you look at any cult around the world at any given point, you've got 90% of its institutionalized memes in a state of chronic insanity, mediocrity, stupidity, cruelty, and very low yields. Like, just look at your education system, look at your prison system, look at your job system, look at your media system, look at your politics. 90% of any cult is self-referential dogmas that this is what we do because this is what we do and that's why we do it. And that's who we are. We are the meme. We are the identity. We are the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And we do not examine it. And we punish those that diverge from the herd. But the most intelligent people, and 10% of a cult, is leading the way. You know, the Americans are leading the way in making and spending money. They have been doing that pretty well. But the Danish are leading the way in focusing on an overall balance of social life, care for people, and economic system. There's a strong balance there. The Thais are leading the world in courtesy and smiles in so many ways. So every cult is leading the way in some arena. And if you diverge from your cult, whether it's the area that it is ignorant and insane, or it's the area that it's leading the way, there's the sense of the wrongness, because you're losing the network effect. The program that you've been given by your cult, this will help you to be a Japanese person, an American person, and this will help you have an identity. So, what is right and wrong? It is a guidance system through the lens of cult, through the lens of paradigm, that promises to deliver sustainable yields of well-being, more sustainable yields of higher well-being. That's the promise of right and wrong if you do the right thing. Now, is it the right thing? You see, because within the capitalist materialist paradigm, if cutting one tree down a day and making $100 is a good thing, then cutting 1,000 trees a day and making $100,000 is a better thing. Within the paradigm of materialism and the free market capitalist system, becoming more and more efficient at cutting down trees and turning them into dollars is a good thing. For what? For the economy. It's going up. But it is a bad thing for erosion, for temperature. For temperature volatility is mediated by the insulation of the forest canopy. So wind volatility goes up as temperature volatility goes up. So in a desert, it can go from below 0 to 100 degrees in a matter of an hour. Why? Because there's no insulation to hold the heat in the evening and protect the heat in the summer. There is a rapid and volatile change in temperature. Now, rapid and volatile changes in temperatures lead to extreme winds. Extreme winds create storms and dust bowls. So you could say it's bad for life, because when you have volatility, extreme volatility, very few life forms can survive that extreme volatility. You also get anti-specialization, because nature likes to create specialists. This is the worm that grows in this tree. This is the beetle that eats this tree. This is the tree that grows under this other tree. So the benefit of specialization is the same in the free market system. If someone does plumbing every single day, 8 hours a day for 20 years, they are likely to be a very good plumber. But if from the first hour in the morning, they have to be a plumber, and then an hour later they have to be an electrician, and then an hour later they have to be something else to survive a volatile environment, then they're less likely to be very good. They have to carry around the tools of the electrician, the plumber. So the more volatile change occurs within a given environment, the less specialized the patterns of energy the life forms can be in that environment. And so you could say this is a disaster. Cutting down trees at a rate of 100,000 per day has increased the dollars from 100 to 100,000 a day. But it's increased wind volatility, it's increased erosion. So from the ecological paradigm, there's no such thing as a free lunch. It's good for capitalism, it's bad for the ecology. So in a Western paradigm where you have to find the good people and the bad people and take sides in the politics of identity, you have to take sides. Are you an ecologist or are you an economist? And of course, these sides are all misinformed, because if the planet dies, so do the economists. If the economists die, the environmentalists that are flying around on their planes protesting and doing this and holding up their flags, who's going to make the flags? Who's going to buy their clothes? They'll be busy washing their laundry and can't get to the protest. So if the economists die, the ecologists die as well. So the healthier paradigm that nature teaches us is that it's about the middle way. And it's about mitigating unnecessary extremes to move closer towards intelligence. And so right and wrong is a guide. It is a guide informed by the cult network effect that says that if you join a very large network, you will do better than if you join a very small network, which is counteracted by the intelligence continuum, which says that in the entire history of humanity and evolution, the smallest number of people have always been doing the most intelligent thing. Or more accurately, because you also have a minority of renegades that are well behind the cult. If you want to find the most intelligent patterns of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being on the planet, avoid all majorities and look for a distinct minority that is doing things on the bleeding edge of evolution. They are the early adopters and innovators, and others will come later. So is something right or is it wrong? What we're really asking is, what is the circle? Number one. And where are we on the circle? Number two. The more extreme we are at any point in the circle, the more suffering we will experience over time by occupying an extreme position. If we consume acid chronically and do not consume alkaline, and our body moves and becomes too acidic, at some rate of acidity, we will die. If we have too much salt in our body at some rate of drinking cups of salt, we will die. If we have no salt in our body, if we have no acidity, we will die. So the ultimate rightness begins by drawing a circle that includes all polarities, up and down, right and wrong, in and out, good and bad, kind and unkind, selfless and selfish, all polarities. Number one. Number two, we diagnose our location by doing two diagonal lines. And when we can find, that's the diagnosis, we've found our location on the sphere. Next, we find the center of the sphere. Now, this can be a personal center. It can be a family center. It can be a cult center. It can be a species center. It can be a planetary center. Now, what do I mean by that? If you have been partying since the day you were born, and you are broke with a pile of bills, you are over here in an extreme. And your grace, your medicine, your rightness will correspond to moving in this direction towards the center. If you are an executive who doesn't smile, who has been focusing on turning $1 into $2 since the day you were born, though obviously that's a little bit more of a stretch, but certainly since the day your cult told you that's what important people did, your way to center is going back in this direction. Now, your cult as a whole may be leaning too much towards meditation and not enough towards engaging with the outer world. But you personally may be obsessed with the outer world and need to move towards your center. Your center is the point of grace. It's the still point. It's different for everyone because where you are is different for everyone. Everyone has had a different experience. Everyone exists in a different location in the circle. The center for each person, this person needs to go here, this person needs to go here. They will feel right doing it because they are right. The guidance system of life that exists in every cell of our body will communicate to this person as they go north that the wheel is wobbling less, that the wheel is spinning more gracefully. And they will say, this is the right way, I've found it. And the person in the north here moving south will have the exact same experience. And as they meet in the middle, they will both have a story of how their life was off kilter, how their wheel was wobbling violently. It was so painful and stressful and noisy and intense. And then they discovered money and the beauties of materialism. And they realized that life was not just about begging for rice and doing this and whatever. And you know, that children could enjoy a rubber ball, that a rubber ball was not evil just because it was a material thing, and da-da-da, and it was wonderful. And the person coming from the north, you know, it's not about looking at a screen 8 hours a day to get another eighth of a penny out of a share of a company I don't even care about. There are more important things like meditating, like asking questions of life. I've never even been to a monastery. I don't even know what it is. And they will move towards the center. And their path, their recommendation, a narcissistic culture, a self-absorbed culture, which all cultures are, because all cultures are culturally illiterate. That's what makes them a cult. If they were really intelligent, every culture would begin by teaching their children, these are our yields as a cult. In America, as a good American, 33,000 people will commit suicide this year, more than will die in car accidents. That's what we do. Now, the Danish have a different statistics. The Native Americans 500 years ago, you know, per million, they had this statistic. We're actually doing very poorly in this area. And one of the reasons, if we actually gather the data, is that we don't have a sense of meaning. And one of the reasons we don't have a sense of meaning is materialism denies any sense of meaning. So these people are way off in the material, and it's just miserable. They want to get out of it. And why would you continue a miserable life if it has no meaning? So cults do not educate their people on the pros and cons of their cultism. They educate their people that this is the way to do things because this is how we do things. So you better do things or there will be trouble, and that's why you should do things. So do it like we do it. And ignore all those other cultures. We're the best. We have the right way of doing things. And all cults in human history have said the exact same thing to their people. So this is just, you know, what's going on. Now, if we were culturally literate, we would say, well, the Japanese are best at getting a sense of artistry here or this, and the Danish are best at, solving homelessness for their people, and the Thai are best at smiling and, letting go of minor things and moving on, and the Americans are best at making and spending large sums of money, often on things that don't create sustainable well-being, but we have a lot of them. And so you can then look at how each cult correlates to sustainable well-being, and that determines the intelligence of the cult. Because you have two sets of competency. The lower set of competency is, I have a machine gun, it kills 3 people an hour, but now I've got a better machine gun, and now it kills 10 people an hour. I've gotten more competent at building machine guns. Now, the higher form of competency is we used to spend 1,000 trees per person, and they were likely to be depressed and bored. But now we spend 2 trees, and they're likely to be excited about life. Meaning we're consumed less energy, and we've got higher yields of sustainable well-being. Well, that's the higher form of intelligence. We've reduced energy consumption, we've got higher yields. Now, nature rewards us for becoming more of the higher form of intelligence, moving towards symmetry, moving towards balance, moving towards grace, moving towards sustainability and efficiency. But the cult rewards us for doing the exact opposite. The cult rewards us for conforming to what? The cult. Do what we do. This is what an American does. This is what an American thinks. So do it because you're an American. Then you can be part of us. And we'll all be Americans together, regardless of the intelligence of an American. We'll all be Americans. We'll do this, think this, say this, feel this, and be this way. And you'll be part of a network, a large network. And it's a good network. If you'll speak our language, you'll be able to make lots of money and spend it on things. It's a good network to belong to. So these are the two tensions: cult and what it rewards, and ecology, nature, life, and what it rewards. Every cult is asymmetrical. It overemphasizes some things and ignores others, and in doing so creates unnecessary suffering. Ecology is always moving us back to center. The cult is moving us off-center. Now, the off-center of every cult is a certain form of specialization within nature, and in that sense can bring a synergistic framework if we don't get too caught up at a toxic level with our own cult, but actually explore a variety of cultures in the world. Right and wrong are also coming from two sources. The conscience and the ecology says that it's wrong to cut down 100 trees when a single tree would do a better job in a better technology for a better purpose. The cult rewards us and says that whatever the cult is doing, however asymmetrically it's doing it, is good because it's itself. It's self-referential. It's good because we're doing it, and that's why we're doing it, because it's good, and that's us, right? It's just round and round. And the cult will reward you for conformity. And every child depends on their cult. First of all, to be born. If the cult sterilizes its people, then there's no birth. So every infant depends on the cult to be born, to survive, to feel secure, to get some sense of love and belonging, to learn language, to learn the technology, to join the network. And every cult is flawed. And the migration, the evolution of a cult happens through its members, who must, having sympathized and adopted the cult and its memes, must then rebel and move into antithesis. And then have to find a synthesis, a balance between the memes of the cult, which say go this way, and the memes of life, which say go this way. In any two of those extremes, if you reject everything and all things about your cult, I will not speak the language, I will not use money, I will not put an iota of gas in my car, I will not eat any food from chemical farms, I will not. You get into too much of an extreme and you will die. If you obsess about your cult and do not have a skepticism for the many sadistic, insane, and cruel expressions of asymmetry, you blindly follow the whims and memes of an often sociopathic cult, you very well may die. And so again, life teaches us to seek the middle ground. The point of grace at the center between cult and ecology. That is the middle way. That is the right way. That is the most efficient way to meet what our human needs: to survive, to feel secure, to have love and belonging, self-esteem, develop our gifts, bring them abundantly into the world. become part of something bigger than ourselves, and in doing so learn to love ourselves and then export and share that love with others, this is the path, the right path. The path, when you listen to the wheel spinning, it feels true. It feels right. It feels beautiful. It feels good. It's not a bumpy ride. It's not a violent and shaking nightmare. It feels good. It's true. It's in the center. Pull back the stream, you let loose the arrow, and it hits the center. It was a true aim. It was a life worth living. We're all aiming for that center. And the more trauma there is, which is predicated on traumatic illiteracy, the more of us that are traumatically illiterate, unconsciously perpetuating our own and others' trauma, the more volatility there is. The more volatility there is, the more we have to be prepared for everything. The more we have to be prepared for everything, the more we cannot rest. We cannot get excellent in any one area. And so life, the right way, moves us towards less volatility, more stability on our journey towards our center, towards balance over time. Hi, I'm Dane Rose. All knowledge begins with a paradigm, and out of that paradigm comes an idea, an awareness that we adopt, reject, or synthesize into something better. It doesn't become wisdom, it doesn't become useful until we take action, until we integrate it into not only our thoughts, but our feelings, our body, our words, and our way of being. For that to occur, we have to move from the passive media paradigm into more active engagement. In the link below, in the More Information section, is an invitation to join a very small, deliberately filtered, high-quality discussion with a group of people who share a common language and want to work with these ideas, with me and with one another, with the sole goal of creating 10 times more sustainable well-being for ourselves and those around us per unit of energy invested. Thank you for watching.